When the message hit the war channels of the Orion frontier, command decks went silent because it came from Queen Thalazra of the Vare Dominion, ruler of a species that treated battle like religion, and her demand was simple: send me your fiercest warrior, or watch this alliance die. 3 fleets had already fallen to the hive-born Carid. Border worlds were burning, and the Vare throne itself stood one defeat away from extinction. Earth answered with a single shuttle, no escort, no banners. And when the hatch opened beneath the black towers of the Vare Palace, the court did not find a giant in armor. It found Lieutenant Mara Vance, human, combat medic, 32. Carrying 2 trauma packs and a surgical kit, the hall erupted in disgust. Generals struck spear butts against the stone. Nobles hissed, and someone laughed, because in a kingdom drowning in blood, humanity had sent a healer. Queen Thalestra did not laugh. She descended from her throne, gold eyes fixed on the human with contempt. Mara stood still under that gaze, small beside the Vare. But unshaken, you insult my house. The queen said, I demanded a warrior. Mara's voice stayed level. Earth sent the one who fights death every day. The court laughed again until the queen stepped closer and asked, if I placed you in my war, little healer, what exactly will you kill? Mara met her stare without blinking. Despair first, then whatever follows it. The laughter died. Because mockery is easy until someone speaks with truth that does not need volume. The queen kept her alive out of curiosity, nothing more. And before sunset, Mara was sent to Moon Fortress of Raal, where the Vare were making their last stand. That was when the insult became a problem for everyone. Raal was a machine built to hide panic. Wounded Vare warriors lined the corridors in disciplined silence. Half dying from infections they considered too minor to treat, surgeons still burned wounds shut with hooks. And soldiers with ruptured organs were being shoved back to the line because pain to the Vare was honorable. Mara walked into that disaster and started issuing orders with merciless speed. Sterilize the tools, isolate the fever cases, stop returning the half-dead to combat, clear this floor, move those patients. Boil everything metal. De Vare hated her immediately, then obeyed her within the hour, because competence has a language every species understands. For 3 straight days, she barely slept. Stitching arteries through bombardments, draining venom sacs, turning storage bays into triage stations, and forcing proud warriors to rest long enough to survive. Survival rates doubled before command noticed, tripled when they did. Soon soldiers who once bared their fangs at her were waiting for the human medic, because if Mara Vance reached you in time, you might live, the queen had asked for a destroyer. But the most dangerous thing on Raal turned out to be mercy with a pulse. Queen Thalestra watched as wounded fighters returned to the line alive and burning with something fiercer than pride. They were no longer fighting because shame demanded it. They were fighting because someone had decided their lives were worth saving. The queen had commanded armies for 2 decades. Yet this was the first time she understood that morale could be built from compassion as surely as rage. On the 4th night, the Carid learned the same lesson and struck where it would hurt most. Burrowing spores punched through lower shield grid and erupted inside the medical sector. Alarms screamed, lights went crimson, and the recovery wards became a kill zone in seconds. Guards rushed to form a line, but many patients could not stand. Some were sedated, some were open on surgical tables. And the first Carid horrors were already spilling through the smoke. All blades, acid, and hunger, Thalestra seized her war sword and charged downward. Certain she would arrive too late, but what she found in the ward would outlive her empire. Mara had overturned surgical stations into barricades. Armed walking, wounded with injector pistols, sealed one blast door by hand after the controls failed, and was dragging patients through smoke while firing her sidearm with calm precision. She was not the strongest fighter in the room, not the fastest, not the most savage. But she stood between monsters and the helpless with a ferocity only healers ever fully earn. Because those who spend their lives preserving life know exactly what it costs. The breach fight lasted 19 minutes by the time the queen reached her. Mara had acid burns across one arm, 2 cracked ribs, and a blade wound through the shoulder. yet she was still working. Sealing a child soldier's collapsed lung with one hand, while directing defenders with the other. Then Thalesra understood what Earth had meant. This was a warrior, not because she loved violence, but because she walked straight into it for people who could not stand alone. The queen carved through the last Carrid forms beside her, and when silence fell over ruined ward, Mara swayed where she stood, blood running down her sleeve. The queen caught her before she hit the floor. "Why?" Thalesra asked. "Why risk your life for those who mocked you?" Mara gave a thin, tired smile, because that is where medics belong. By dawn, the story had outrun every battle report. The alien queen who demanded a warrior had been answered by a human medic. And the medic had held the line. Vare soldiers painted white healer marks beside their clan sigils. A thing never seen in their history, the generals who had laughed now saluted when Mara passed. And Queen Thalesra issued a command across the Dominion. No wounded shall be discarded, no healer shall be dishonored, and no one shall again mistake compassion for weakness. Final campaign against Carrid began 2 weeks later, and the Vare fought like a species reborn. Because their dead were fewer, their living stronger, and their courage no longer fed on pride alone when victory came. The queen offered Mara land, ships, titles. In a place beside the throne, Mara refused all but one thing: medical treaties for every frontier world in the Alliance. Thalesra granted them at once, and years later, historians did not point to a fleet maneuver or a palace bargain. They pointed to the day an alien queen asked for a killer, and humanity sent the warrior the galaxy still did not understand. The one who walks into suffering empty-handed, dares death to try harder, and comes back carrying the living.